And now, ladies and gentlemen, our own version of Cole Porter's Begin the Begin.
As of May 1st, the Worldometer's website, the Statistics Compendium website, states that out of actual COVID-19 cases with an outcome in the US, the recovery rate stands at 98.6%. It's worth re-emphasising this point. The recovery rate for COVID-19 in the US, as of May 1st, stands at 98.6%. On May 22nd, CNN reported that, quote, the CDC also say its best estimate is that 0.4% of people who show symptoms and have COVID-19 will die, end quote. However, I would submit to the viewer that based on the evidence that we shall examine together, that the figures for COVID-19 have been heavily manipulated to try and greatly enhance the ferociousness / confirmed kill count column of COVID-19, for reasons that are perhaps less than noble / gentlemanly in nature. For instance, on April 14th, the CDC reported that they were now recording probable cases of COVID-19 as an actual COVID-19 event. To be clear, since April 14th, the CDC have been recording probable cases / deaths of COVID-19 as actual cases / deaths attributed to COVID-19. President Trump has a phrase for this, and it's a doozy.
Fake news. It's fake. Phony. Fake. A few days ago, I called the fake news the enemy of the people, and they are. They are the enemy of the people. Because they have no sources, they just make them up when there are none.
President Trump would be 100% correct in his assertion, for without testing the cadaver for the actual cause of fatality, it is grossly unprofessional / deceitful to record the death of any individual as being attributed to COVID-19. Just because the individual has died with COVID-19 in their system, this does not mean that COVID-19 is the cause of death.
Let's make lemonade. Okay, let's go to it.
The web of intrigue gets yet more intriguing. Dr. Deborah Birx, one of President Trump's primary public health advisors on the White House COVID-19 task force, confirmed on April 7th that they were recording people who had died of heart / kidney problems as COVID-19 deaths.
Can you talk about your concerns about deaths being misreported by coronavirus?
So I think in this country, we've taken a very liberal approach to mortality. There are other countries that if you had a pre-existing condition, and let's say the virus caused you to go to the ICU and then have a heart or kidney problem, some countries are recording that as a heart issue or a kidney issue and not a COVID-19 death. Right now, we're still recording it, and the great thing about having forms that come in and a form that has the ability to mark it as COVID-19 infection, the intent is right now that if someone dies with COVID-19, we are counting that as a COVID-19 death. The intent is right now that if someone dies with COVID-19, we are counting that as a COVID-19 death.
My next guest is a doctor and state senator in Minnesota who is deeply troubled by the CDC's latest guidance for counting COVID deaths. Dr. Scott Jensen joins me now. Doctor, I want to read for our viewers what the CDC says in part about how to count COVID deaths relating to that last issue we just raised. In cases where a definite diagnosis of COVID cannot be made, but is suspected or likely, like the circumstances are compelling with a reasonable degree of certainty, it is acceptable to report COVID-19 on a death certificate as probable or presumed. So, doctor, what's the problem with that?
Well, in short, it's ridiculous. I spent some time earlier today just going through the CDC's manual on how to complete death certificates and the parts that were specifically written for physicians. And in that manual, it talks of precision and specificity, and that's what we were trained with. The determination of the cause of death is a big deal. It has impact on estate planning. It has impact on future generations. And the idea that we're going to allow people to massage and sort of game the numbers is a real issue, because we're going to undermine the trust. The idea that we're going to allow people to massage and sort of game the numbers is a real issue, because we're going to undermine the trust. And right now, as we see politicians doing things that aren't necessarily motivated on fact and science, the public's their trust in politicians is already there.
It's important to note that as Dr. Birx/CDC have been recording heart/kidney deaths as COVID-19 deaths since at least April 7th, that this factor alone will inevitably greatly distort the actual fatality rate directly attributed to COVID-19, rendering official statistics for COVID-19 deaths 100% unreliable /
Very fake news.
I know, but aren't you?
For instance, heart disease is the #1 cause of death in the United States, with the CDC recording 647,457 deaths in 2017. Nephritis, nephrotic syndrome and nephrosis, better known as kidney disease, is the #9 cause of death in the United States, with the CDC recording 50,633 deaths in 2017. When we take into account Dr. Birx's remarks from the April 7th briefing confirming that heart/kidney related deaths are included in the official COVID-19 death rate statistics, it becomes clear that a very tidy percentage of recorded fatalities attributed to COVID-19 should, in reality, be recorded as heart/kidney related deaths. Furthermore, from assessment of Dr. Birx's remarks, it seems as though the CDC, since January 20th, the first known case of COVID-19 in the US, have been recording all deaths of any individual demonstrating symptoms of COVID-19 as actual COVID-19 deaths. This, I would submit to the viewer, is a highly manipulative / very deceitful way to record statistics for COVID-19.
Oh, this is already boring the shit out of me. Kill him!
Coronavirus.
Coronavirus.
COVID-19.
Coronavirus.
COVID-19.
Coronavirus.
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 Taking into account the faulty metrics being used to establish the death rate from COVID-19 by Dr. Birx and the CDC, I'd submit to the viewer that when it comes to ascertaining the true death rate of COVID-19, that not even Batman knows the true figure. However, and whatever the true death rate for COVID-19 is, and whilst every death caused by it is indeed a tragedy, a 1.4/0.4% death rate is by no means justification enough to shut down the world economy, close schools, put businesses into bankruptcy, put healthy people under house arrest, psychologically terrorise the global population, potentially put families on the street because they can't pay the rent, risk mass food supply shortages and rioting, potentially collapse governments and governmental services such as the NHS due to severely restricted taxation intake thanks to mass unemployment, all potentially ending up with government having to declare martial law. This type of potential chaos which would be inevitable if global shutdown continued for too long, is the type of chaos that I would suggest to the viewer would suit nefarious entities and cults that would be looking to benefit from a pre-planned pandemic, with the ultimate aim being to eventually create order out of chaos, a new world order. It's important to understand for those kind-hearted types who do support world lockdown, that even with a COVID-19 vaccine, that a COVID-19 vaccine is unlikely to be a magic bullet that will eliminate all coronaviruses. Viruses mutate, especially ones being genetically engineered in a level 4 biolab in China. This is a fact of life. For instance, if Dr. Bill Gates does have a vaccine ready to go in 6 to 12 months' time, the virus in all likelihood will probably have mutated, rendering a Bill Gates vaccine useless. The world has never stopped like this before, no, not for AIDS, Ebola, flu, or even 2 world wars. In short, if the viewer cannot see that there is something strange going on with coronavirus and world lockdown, I cannot help you.
We may allow ourselves a brief period of rejoicing. Today is Victory in Europe Day.